My name is Inns Medford, and I'm 27 years old. I was 5 when my parents drove me to my grandfather's house on a grey October afternoon, told me they'd be back once they figured some things out, and never came back. Not for birthdays, not for Christmas, not once in 22 years. Grandpa Walter never let me feel abandoned. He raised me in that old 2-story house on Larks Lane like I was the reason the sun came up. He taught me how to fix a leaky faucet, how to balance a checkbook, how to stand up straight when someone tried to make me feel small. My sister, Deline, stayed behind with our parents. She got the version of them I never did: birthday parties, family vacations, an ordinary childhood. I got the quiet, steady love of a widowed old man who smelled like pipe tobacco and peppermint. Somehow, that turned out to be the better deal. Grandpa got sick 2 years ago. Pancreatic cancer, the kind that doesn't leave room to negotiate. I moved back into the house on Larks Lane to take care of him, sleeping in my old childhood bedroom, feeding him soup, reading him the newspaper, because his eyes had grown too tired to focus on the print. In those final months, he started talking differently. Quieter. More deliberate, like a man finally tying up loose ends he'd been avoiding for years. "Inns," he said to me one night, his hand shaking as he set down his cup of tea. "When I'm gone, there's something in my study you need to find. Don't let anyone rush you out of this house, not even your mother, especially not your mother." I didn't understand what he meant. I just nodded and told him he wasn't going anywhere for a long time. We both knew that was a lie we needed to tell each other. He passed on a Tuesday morning in March, my hand in his, the birds just starting to sing outside his window. I hadn't even finished crying before my phone started buzzing. My mother, Carol, calling for the first time in 8 months. She didn't ask how I was doing. She didn't ask about the funeral. Her first words were, "We're coming to get the house ready to sell." They arrived 2 days later, my mother, my father Gordon, and Deline, pulling into the driveway like they'd never left, like the last 2 decades hadn't happened. Deline got out first, walked past me without a hug, and went inside like she was inspecting a property she already owned. I found her upstairs 20 minutes later, standing in what used to be my bedroom, running her hand along the window frame. "This room gets better light than mine," she said, like we were negotiating a real estate deal, instead of standing in the house of the man who'd just died. "I think I'll take this one when we move in." I didn't even get a chance to respond before my mother appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, wearing that same tight, unreadable expression she used to wear when I was a child, asking why she hadn't called. "Inns," she said, flat and businesslike. "Pack your things. We're putting the house on the market by the end of the month, and you can't be staying here while we handle it." I stood in the hallway of the only home that had ever felt like mine, listening to the woman who'd left me here at 5 years old tell me to pack my things 22 years later, less than 72 hours after we buried the man who actually raised me. Something in my chest went cold and still. Not sadness, something closer to clarity, because Grandpa's voice was still in my head. "Don't let anyone rush you out of this house, not even your mother, especially not your mother." So instead of arguing, instead of packing a single box, I walked down the hallway to his study, the room he'd kept locked for as long as I could remember. The room none of us, not even Deline in all her childhood visits, had ever been allowed inside. I'd found the key 3 nights earlier, tucked inside the pages of his old Bible, exactly where he told me it would be during one of our last conversations. My hand was steady as I slid it into the lock. My mother's voice trailed after me down the hall, sharp with irritation, demanding to know what I thought I was doing. I didn't answer. I turned the key. The lock clicked open with a sound louder than it should have been, like the house itself had been holding its breath for 22 years, waiting for this exact moment. I pushed the study door open. Behind me, my mother's footsteps stopped cold in the hallway, and that's when everyone stopped smiling. The study smelled like old paper and cedar, untouched by anyone but Grandpa Walter himself. Sunlight cut through the blinds in thin gold stripes across his mahogany desk, and there, right in the center, sat a thick manila envelope with my name written across it in his familiar, shaky handwriting. My mother pushed past Deline into the doorway, her face tight with something between anger and confusion. "Inns, what is this? What are you doing in here?" she demanded. I didn't answer. I picked up the envelope, felt the weight of it in my hands, and broke the seal. Inside was a will, not the one my mother had already filed with the courts 3 weeks earlier, the one that supposedly split the house evenly between her and her siblings, but a newer one, dated just 4 months back, notarized and signed with Grandpa's unmistakable signature. Clipped to the front was a letter addressed to me. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, and I read it out loud right there in front of them, because some part of me knew they needed to hear it in his words, not mine. "Inns," the letter began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and your mother has probably already tried to sell the house out from under you. I want you to know I saw everything. I saw her leave you here when you were 5 years old and never look back. I saw her call twice a year out of obligation, never out of love. I saw you grow into a better person than any of them, not despite what they did, but because of how you refused to let it make you bitter. This house, the land, the savings, all of it goes to you. Not because you're my favorite, though you are, but because you're the only one who ever earned it. Your mother, your father, and your sister receive nothing. Not out of spite, but out of fairness. They made their choice 22 years ago. I'm simply honoring it." The room went silent, except for my mother's breathing, sharp and uneven. Deline's face had drained of color, her earlier confidence about the room with better light evaporating into something closer to panic. "That's not real," my mother said, her voice cracking at the edges. "That's not legal. He was sick. He wasn't thinking clearly." "He was thinking more clearly than anyone in this house has in years," I said, surprised at how calm my own voice sounded, how steady, considering how hard my heart was pounding against my ribs. I handed her the will and watched her scan it, watched her eyes catch on the notary stamp, the witness signatures, the date. There was no denying it. Grandpa Walter had planned this for months, quietly and deliberately, the same way he taught me to do everything else in life. My father, who'd said maybe 10 words since arriving, finally spoke from the hallway, his voice tight. "So what? You're just going to throw us out? Your own family?" Something about the word family coming out of his mouth, aimed at me, after everything, almost made me laugh. Almost. "You threw yourselves out 22 years ago," I said. "I just watched Grandpa finish the job." My mother tried a different approach then, softening her voice, saying, "Surely we could figure something out. That surely I didn't want to be the kind of person who left her own mother without a roof over her head. But I'd spent 2 years watching this man die slowly, feeding him, bathing him, holding his hand through nights he was too afraid to sleep alone, while she sent exactly 1 flower arrangement and a card that read, 'Thinking of you,' like I was a co-worker recovering from surgery. I didn't owe her softness. I didn't owe her anything at all. I asked them to leave. Not screaming, not crying, just quiet and final, the way Grandpa would have wanted it handled. Deline left first, brushing past me with tears in her eyes that looked more like frustration than grief. My father followed without another word, jaw clenched tight enough to crack. My mother lingered in the doorway a moment longer, opened her mouth like she wanted to say something that might undo the last 22 years in a single sentence, then closed it again, because there was nothing left to say. She turned and walked out, and I heard the front door close behind her for what I hoped would be the last time. I stood alone in Grandpa's study, surrounded by his books, his old reading glasses still sitting on the desk exactly where he'd left them. And for the first time since he passed, I let myself cry, not out of sadness, but out of something closer to relief. He had seen me all those years when no one else bothered to look. He had seen exactly who I was and exactly what I deserved, and he made sure no one could ever take it from me again. If this story moved you even a little, hit that subscribe button, because there are so many more stories like Inz's waiting for you here on Core Revenge Tales. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.